Yeah, here we go.
There she is.
There she is.
Okay.
Welcome to episode 12
Good afternoon. Well,
of
could be any
good
time of day. Yeah.
good afternoon, y'all.
Hmm.
Episode 12 of Living Out Loud, the podcast for domestic abuse victims and survivors and their support systems and anybody who wants to listen.
Yep.
And we, like, as we said before, as we traverse this experience, um we will talk about aspects that may be peripheral to active abuse,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Hmm.
but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not right. Like we kind of already mentioned that we would, kind of
Lots of
branch
sidelines. Yeah.
branch out, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
there's
Oh,
tons of
speaking of
sidelines,
which, let me just say, so my dear friend Erin, who was supposed to join us this week, she will be joining
right?
us, but she just couldn't make
Okay,
it this week, but she will be. So you're just stuck with me and Ellen again. So.
which I mean, we're plenty, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm a little too much. So and you.
What is that? Go find
So
someone that's less. Isn't that what it is?
if
Yeah.
I'm too much, go find less.
Yep.
Um, so number one, happy Father's Day to any
Hmm.
fathers who may
Hmm.
be listening right now. Um, Father's Day for me is always a little poignant because my dad isn't here anymore.
Hmm.
But I wish some male friends of mine happy Father's Day. And of course I reached out to friends of mine who have lost their dads, Heidi, obviously.
Hmm.
My friend Amy, my friend Angel, um, my friend Jennifer,
Hmm.
especially, because she lost both of her parents. So it's always a day that we think about, right?
Means different
Um,
things for all people.
it does. And yeah, I was saying to myself, I'm like, I can't say too much about my dad because do you want me to burst into tears and have to leave the room?
Then have to leave. Yeah.
Probably not.
Hmm.
So, it's one of those days. And of course, my sisters and I usually reach out to each other and, mom and, stuff like that. So, but to all the fathers all the fathers that may be watching, I don't really know how many there are, but even if there's even one, happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
How was your week, Katie?
Well, let's see.
Oh,
It was a little chaotic, lots of running around.
mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so still got some heavy stuff happening at work, but I think that people are just going through it right now. I think there's just something like we talked about last week. There's just something in the air, definitely.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Mhm.
it's funny that you say that because I speak. So my therapist, Rachel,
Mhm.
I speak with her every 3 weeks. And I was talking to her the last time, and I said to her, are people just losing their fucking minds?
Uh-huh.
And she said, yes. I go, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's the the consensus is yes.
Good to know.
Yeah.
And she expounded upon why, she believes, and that's a whole other, and it had nothing to do with me. It was her theory of,
Hmm.
which is very interesting, but that's for another time. Um, so okay, so
How was
my
your
week was
week, Ellen?
actually very busy with work.
Okay.
Very, like I had 2 14-hour days in a row.
Ay, ay, ay.
And I was like, this is for the birds.
Hmm.
But with my boss is incredibly, incredibly fair. And she was like, okay, on Friday, she was like, leave now.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
no, no, I'm like, I have so much shit. She's like, leave now.
Just go.
And I was like, Lara, I must continue. And she's like, get out of here.
Hmm.
So that was nice.
Good.
Um, and then yesterday, my boys and I, two of my boys and I went down to the town where I went to college.
Oh,
And we tootled around and we met some of my friends from college who actually still live there, and some of their kids for dinner. And we had a
well, that's
really,
nice.
really, yes. And it's so fun.
I had a week of seeing old friends too, actually. You know,
Yeah.
it's let's see, one, two, three. Yeah.
Hmm.
One for a beer, one for coffee, and one for wine on Friday night. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it was that. I forgot about that.
And it's so like I'm someone who really values her friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I have friends that I'm still very close with from like high school,
Yep, me
you
too.
know,
Yep.
um, college,
Mm-hmm.
people that I worked with in previous jobs. And I really try to keep those connections
Me too.
going.
Agreed.
So I'm the annoying one in the friend group who is who'll send out a group chat to everyone we went to college with and be like,
Uh-huh.
who's going to homecoming this
Yeah,
year?
but you
And
know
it's
what?
in like,
Everybody needs one of those people. They're the glue people, that
that's
keep it.
me.
Yeah.
I'm the
Mm-hmm.
one. Yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
the one. And they're like, Ellen, homecoming's not for 4 months. I'm like, I already got my Airbnb, like that's me. So, well, I mean, I feel like you got to organize. I mean, especially without having
You
kids and
need things
work
to
and
look
but
forward to.
yeah, and so that'll be fun. So that was like a highlight. Okay, so and then I went to Heidi's daughter's graduation party last
Aw.
night when I
Mm-hmm.
got back, which of course I got back at like 9 o'clock and people were like literally walking down the driveway. I was like, is it over? Did I
Yeah.
miss it? But then we all of my neighbors and I just hung out until, whenever. So I
You just
really
hung out
I
with her.
so Sophie wasn't there anymore.
She's gone.
She was gone.
She's okay. Yeah.
But I dropped her card off. So okay, so the headline for this week, I only picked one and it's not hmm. Okay, so it's from the Washington Post from
Mm-hmm.
June 12th, 2024.
Okay.
And the title is Abused by the Badge.
Oh.
Now, this is actually a series that
Mm-hmm.
Washington Post does. So what this is Washington Post decided to embark upon a kind of, investigative journalistic study of abuse by law enforcement.
Okay.
And they kind of combed through like case files and arrests and, nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
So what they found is from 2005 to 2022, almost 18,000 law enforcement officials were arrested
Wow.
for and charged with various crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
1 in 10 were charged with child sexual abuse.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
1 in 10.
That's
And
alarming to say the least.
so mathematically speaking, that's like 1,800 police officers. So, okay. This is where it gets a little interesting. So, stats wise, 99% of those arrested were male.
Mm-hmm.
66% had more than 5 years of service. 40% of those who were convicted were not sentenced to any prison time.
What percentage?
40.
Wow.
So,
Yep.
this is why, of course, they published this. All right. So,
Mm-hmm.
right. So 40% of convicted officers not sentenced to prison.
Addicted. Yep.
The way that some of these officers came across the boys and girls that they abused, um, because these are boys and girls, these are minors.
Okay.
They came across them on patrol. So either they stopped them for a speeding ticket, or they answered a domestic violence call, or they answered a rape investigation, or they answered a suicide attempt, curfew enforcement, noise complaint, finding a runaway, making witnesses to crimes, youth focused assignments, which would be, school resource officers,
Yeah.
Boy Scouts, police explorers, youth cadets, DARE program,
Jeez.
ride-alongs, police athletic league, crosswalk duty, and then some through community outreach, like fundraisers, whatever. Okay, so
I
It's
mean, like
disturbing.
nauseous. That's just
Right.
nauseating.
Okay. So it's disturbing because and that's why it's called abused by the badge, because these people who swore to serve and protect abused.
Yeah.
They abused. And these are 15 years old, 15-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 17-year-olds. The one, okay. And so, okay, out of the charges, right? 39% rape, 20% child sexual abuse material, 90% forcible fondling, 7% online solicitation, 14% other. Problem with this, well, other than the obvious,
Hmm.
is that when these charges were filed and when some of these officers went to trial, the cases fell apart sometimes because the victims um, freaked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Not uncommon.
I'm going to be retaliated against. They have some quotes actually from some. He's going to find me.
Hmm.
He told me he was going to kill my family. He told me that he had people watching my house. He told me if I ever drive a car, I will be found and I'll be given a ticket for any reason. I'll injure your family. So some of the cases fell apart against some of these officers because, and then there was also incidents of the officers themselves tampering with evidence.
Yeah.
Um, basically destroying evidence.
Hmm.
And then another interesting point where they did interview some like prosecutors and, judges and stuff. And some of them said, like, we really didn't want to take up a case against someone that we have worked with. So, um, this is, and also it says in there, police officers undergo training to they undergo training within their department to for so but that's in regards to like excessive force at the scene, how they can manage each other, right?
Right.
As police officers. They don't go through any training in regard to this.
Mm-mm. No. And
And
predators, these people don't just it doesn't just show
doesn't
up.
just
So I
happen.
mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I mean they I had a case once. Let's see, how do I was working with the child who had been abused by an in-home worker, right? And this in-home worker had abused before and was on the
Right.
sex offender registry.
Oh, oh,
So you will find, yeah, so they didn't bother to do the background check.
they didn't vet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that actually is mentioned in this article as
Yeah.
well, that because there is such a need for police
Yes.
officers,
And I know yes, that they will, there's a lot of things, if it comes up on your background check, they do it in the military too sometimes. They'll be like, oh, that was a long time ago, right?
they
And so,
let it slide.
yeah.
And
Especially if recruiting is low. Yeah. Yeah.
so like that, but this article, it's very long. And in it, they specifically name certain officers
Mm,
and
powerful.
they do. They name them, they give where they're from, their city and state, what it
Hmm.
was that they were, and these are all the ones that were convicted, what they were convicted of. And some of it will turn your stomach.
Yeah.
The one, and I will say it just because it sounded like something really kind of out of a movie to me, is a police officer who responded to, a rape call. And he was the one who was escorting the victim to get her rape kit done. And he sexually assaulted her.
Wow. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't want to, I don't want to go out on a limb
No,
here,
that,
but that
wow.
guy should be,
Wonder if he was one of the ones not convicted.
I think he was. Yeah, because his was specifically mentioned,
Yeah.
name and all.
Yeah.
So But that guy, I mean, if I go all Hammurabi code on everyone here, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, that guy should be castrated
Yeah.
publicly.
Yeah.
Not that we do that shit anymore, but like, so that, okay, so disturbing headline and unfortunate because a lot is not reported
Can you
because it
imagine how
is,
much is not reported? Yeah.
because it's a
I
police
mean, yeah,
officer.
of course, of course. Yeah.
So, and it goes along the same lines of, you know, priests molesting altar boys or kids,
Yeah.
within Catholic church programs. We've got that going on. And, goes along the lines, and this is still one that boggles my mind of, that this rash of female teachers who are getting involved in sexual relationships with 14-year-old, 13-year-old boys.
Yeah. And the fact is, there was a really good series that addressed this because the sexism across, the dynamic where we have a tendency to want to high five these boys for landing their teacher kind of thing makes me so sick. And they did it. I wish I could remember. I think it's just called Teacher. And they did a very, very good job of addressing his trauma once he confronted her as a young man.
How could you, like,
Yeah.
what I also hate is, okay, we all know that, like, Mary Kay Letourneau was the face of,
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
she was married and had 4 kids
Yep.
and couldn't keep herself away from an eighth grader. Now, I don't, I will say this, and she was something like in her mid 30s,
Uh-huh.
maybe late 30s at the time. A mid 30 to late 30-year-old woman who finds a 14-year-old sexually attractive,
Yep.
something is amiss
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
that situation. Um, Even of course, we all know she went on to have 2 kids by him in
Mm.
jail, and then they got married, and then I think they got divorced, but they were together, and now she's passed away. She died
He's
of
passed
cancer.
away. Yeah. And to
Um,
hear him talk about it now, he can see that it was abusive.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, would you go as far to say is that she groomed him?
Oh, absolutely. So women, how they groom young boys is different than how men groom young girls. I mean,
Is it like motherly?
there is a lot of that. I mean, I don't want to globalize it or just,
Right.
but it does come into that kind of thing. Um, and so it doesn't follow the protocol necessarily that we're used to when we identify grooming. But I really only feel like we're starting to hold these women predators accountable. It feels new to me because I can still remember conversations 10 years ago where we were still kind of excusing it. In the
Yeah.
sense that like how we would say, well, she shouldn't have dressed like that, which still happens. Um,
Don't get me
I have
started.
I have literally heard people say, well, what 14-year-old boy wouldn't want to bang a 32-year-old woman?
That is the prevailing
Yeah.
response,
I
right?
I just I
That is the prevailing response. Like, whoa, he got lucky.
and I
Wow.
think and this, um, raising boys and watching them. I feel like it's a very, not to go off on a whole other tangent,
Oh,
but
I know.
yeah, it is a very, um, it's a dance, you know,
Well, yeah, and
because
it
I
is.
the our boys are in an interesting position these days where, um, I'm choosing my words carefully.
They don't know how to act.
No, they don't, and there's not much that they can do that's safe anyway. It's like they can't win. I mean,
There were I yeah, I
I'll
did
share this
well,
story. My
go
son,
for it.
his first homecoming dance, he's really struggled with school, and high school was exciting for him. It felt different, and he felt like he was being treated as a person instead of just this kid that should be quiet, you know.
Right.
My guy's got a lot of opinions. And he was all dressed up. He went with his buddy, and I get this phone call. And did I talk about this already? No, I didn't.
I
Okay.
don't think so,
I,
no.
I got this phone call. Essentially, what happened was they were all hanging out and having a good time, and some girl decided to accuse him of sexually assaulting her, touching her. Now, my son didn't even know who accused him of this, didn't even know it was going around until someone confronted him about it. And they're calling me, telling me I really should come get him because, it's not that we think he did anything, but it's probably gonna. Why wasn't she held accountable?
Well, okay.
And she never
I,
was. And she never was. And to this day, 3 days or 3 years later, no, he was in his second year. It's still kids bring it up and harass him about it still. And he never went to another dance again and has no intention of going ever. Right?
I have a similar incident.
I bet.
Um, my youngest, but he befriended the daughter of my neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the mother, and
Mm-hmm.
he and the girl like kind of started chatting, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they both went to the high school. Um, and she's a freshman and he's a junior, but they were really just friends. Like
Mm-hmm.
they were both having difficulty with their friend groups,
Mm-hmm.
and they were kind of bonding over it.
Yeah.
And and he came to me and told me this story. So she was having a little trouble with her friend groups, but she started talking with my son, and they were really kind of friends, like no romantic designs
Right.
whatsoever. And she you know how it is with girls, if they're on the outs with their friend groups, but one of them, reaches a hand out, you immediately go for it, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
so one of the girls contacted her, and she, what's up? And she was like, oh, well, I'm talking to so and so, and um, we've become like friends, and this girl who turned out to be the younger sister of my son's friend.
Oh,
This girl said to my neighbor's daughter, oh, well, he's going to rape you. And Kate, well, the girl was like, and of course it made the rounds,
of course. Yeah.
right? And so he and the girl stopped talking,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
stopped being friends, and I didn't know if the mom, who's my friend, knew anything about this, so I didn't say anything. And then I was over at her house one night for her birthday party, the mom, and we were outside having a smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I hope that I said, we've never spoken about this, but I hope that she was like, I'm gonna stop you right there. She's like, no, there is not. She
Mm.
said, your son was so good to her,
Mm.
and they were friends. And she's like, and they actually did really cute things together.
Mm.
Like she's like, they went out to lunch. One time they went out in the field and just sat and watched the stars, like right behind like my neighbor's house, like
Yeah.
not some. And I was like, my son?
Yeah. Right.
Whoa, man, wait, that's almost romantic. What the hell? No, so like and so her and I had this kind. She said no. She's like, no. She was I don't think anything badly about it. She's like, but then when that happened with that other girl, and her daughter was like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I said, you know what? The best thing that happened was that they distanced themselves.
Yeah. That's all you can do.
Because why we all know that teenagers are assholes. And I'm sorry if there's anybody in the audience that doesn't have teenagers yet, just wait. It is a melting pot of uncertainty,
Yeah.
peer pressure, who's
Yeah.
popular, who's not, like
Yep.
it is just
Yeah.
I
And
loved high school, but it's a shit show.
yeah, and I
Um,
mean, and this dynamic where, I mean, it's like we've swung. There were so many years where people didn't believe women and girls, right? And now it's almost like I've had, also my son has been threatened. Yeah, if you don't give me what I want, I'll tell them that you were trying to get with me, that you were trying to rape me. That use that. And I have clients that they're in relationships, these men, and she said if I don't do this, that she's gonna accuse me of sexual assault. I mean, it's used like as this, weapon.
And that's what I was saying about like them not knowing how to act,
Mhm.
these teenage boys. I actually read an article about this. I don't know if I brought this up or if I was just talking to my sister, but how in a eh, when toxic masculinity is being thrown around so much,
Mhm.
but there's actually young boys, teens, young men out there who are not being toxic, but just don't know how to act.
Mhm.
And in the article, they speak to this college professor who teaches like at an Ivy League school, and he had a male student come to him and say, you hear so much about toxic masculinity. He's like, what I want to know is what's good masculinity.
Yeah. Boy, do I
He's
have
like,
this conversation with my clients. Yeah, with the men
He's like,
all
nobody's
the
telling
time.
us what good masculinity is.
Yeah.
Like
Because
no one's telling us.
because we've turned masculinity into some sort of,
Swear word.
yeah. And you know what? There is a reason, and I firmly believe this, that we are made the way we're made, and how we're wired. Men have a need to accomplish things, and they have a need to protect, and they have a need to be virile and strong and all of those things. And it's how they're wired. Look at animals. I mean, it's the same. So
Right.
to say that that is makes them less than a person or toxic or whatever you want to say, I think is doing damage, and it's a detriment to our younger generations. As much as it would be to tell a young woman that if she wants to be a stay-at-home mom and just have babies and nurture, not just have babies, but and nurture a family, these days we're like, well, don't you want a career? Don't you want it all? Guess what? We can have those traditional roles if it feels right.
Well, that's people's choice.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So
Um,
here's if you take so I what I really like about my relationship is because you can't, and when it comes to gender, you can't make this stuff up, because when you have a same gender relationship,
mhm.
sociologically, you can look at all these patterns because you're living it. You can't force two people to be together and be like, now we're going to study but I look at, my son is very masculine. He's he's raised by two women. He has good men in his life, but he hasn't been raised by men. Um, so that doesn't necessarily have to come from a male, right? And then
No.
over the years, you'd say people would be like, just because I present more masculine and I'm stronger than my wife and she's much more feminine looking, that everybody would think that I'm the out there doing I'm out there doing the career. And no, I have been the one that has been with the kids. I take care of the house, take care of the
Mhm.
animals, I do the cooking. And it's so funny to see people, take the gender out of it.
Right.
And it's
You
about,
always say that. Take the
yep,
gender out of
take
it.
their gender out of it, and it's about partnership. And you can, if and you raise your kids with that, what feels right to you? What feels right to you? So when a child comes up and says, "What is good masculinity?" Tell me what that is for you, and don't be afraid if it sounds like it's toxic. Let's walk through it. Um, so I don't know, I went off on a tangent, but
No,
um,
that's okay.
yeah,
Because it applies. And the headline that I shared, I mean, it was a study over 17 years. Okay. And they put a lot of effort into it. And they put a lot of stuff into it.
I'd love
And
to
this
see
kind
the response to that. To yeah, what people, they must have lost their minds. Yeah.
well, I can understand how people who are in that career field,
Hmm.
who are the good ones, right, would be like, wow, this makes us all look like,
Oh
predators.
my
And that's
gosh, our
not
need
what
to
we are,
categorize. The minute we get some information, our need
right?
to categorize and put people in little pockets and generalizes. Yeah, dangerous.
So this kind of segues into like I just want to touch briefly upon it. We talked about it. Um, the power and control wheel.
Yeah.
For people who don't know what that is, it was actually created in the 80s by a number of female domestic abuse in
Mm-hmm.
violence,
Sharing their
survivors.
observations of their experiences. Yeah.
And it's a wheel that showed like the outer rim are the types of abuses, and the inner rim or the spokes are how those abuses happen, right?
Can't you
So
share
if
your
it,
screen? You should pull it up.
I can't share my screen when I'm recording.
Stupid.
Totally. Um,
I'll start holding up
totes,
cue cards.
totes. But like we said, I mean, these are things that we've covered,
Yeah,
in the past,
sure.
physical abuse, sexual abuse,
Hmm.
emotional abuse, whatever. And then all the things that lead to it, like economic abuse and
All of them. Yep.
demeaning, right? Like, and so it was just their examples, and power and control, like that's something I made a comment to a friend of mine the other day. Um, he's a good friend of mine. I think I'm kind of like a mom to him. He's 36. I used to work with him, but he's in the army. He joined the army when he was 33 years old.
Oh, wow, cool.
And he's gay.
Mm-hmm.
And he was having an issue with he's taking like a aviation course.
Mm-hmm.
And he was having an issue with the instructor. And the instructor made a reference, kind of not so vague, about him being military,
Mm-hmm.
and also maybe a little bit more vague of a reference to him being gay.
Okay.
And I said, okay. And he was worked up. He's a pretty fiery character. He's one of my favorite people in the world. And I said, what's this guy's deal? Like, he's teaching an aviation course. He was like, yeah, so he's a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
He was a commercial pilot, not a military pilot.
Okay.
And I said, I'm gonna say something. And this is just an observation that I've made. And this will really get us going. There are certain professions, I think, that we've observed that attract a certain type of person,
Yep.
a certain type of personality,
Personality. Yep.
put it that way. I would say pilots is one of the ones that falls into that category.
Okay.
It's a profession, it's a career choice, it's a job
Mm-hmm.
where you have a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
You are in charge of flying a plane, and however many lives on it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get them to their destination and everything, sometimes they clap,
Well,
like,
it's a revered position. I think if we look at all these positions, they're
yes,
revered, right? They're seen
right.
as put on a pedestal. They're seen. It happens with too. It happens in colleges with professors. Say,
Mm,
you know,
the
and
ivory tower,
yes,
the ivory
exactly.
tower.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
And
sage, the sage on the stage.
so
Yes.
let's take that. It happens with therapists. It happens with, so let's take,
Doctors,
yeah,
lawyers,
anybody that is
police,
seen up
police.
here. Yep.
Yeah.
Police. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, now let me see. What are the best words? So what drives someone to seek out? So maybe if they truly seek out the profession because they want that status, that's the kind of people I'm talking about.
That's
Some
exactly
people
what I'm
do it because
talking
they're
about.
just like, I love to fly. And if it comes with this other stuff, I'll manage it. But this is what I really love to do. But there are people who just go into those professions because they want that power and they want to be seen, they want to be revered. So let's do this because this is, we've talked about a lot of important stuff today already, but we didn't, one of our main issues is going to be why do we go back to our
Back.
abusers, right?
You got
And
it.
I'm going to parallel the abusers and the victims here for a second, okay?
Okay.
So you come, say, from a background where you have witnessed or been a part of abuse, okay? Um, now I'm specifically talking about people who have trauma in their life and just setting aside right now the ones that don't, okay?
Okay.
So what we seek out as we grow older and mature is, especially when you have a history of trauma like that, is safety, right? Emotional
I was just
safety.
gonna say that.
Yeah. So you want safety. So
Mm-hmm.
let's start with Let's start with the abuser. Okay. The
Okay.
one who seeks out powerful positions, the one that seeks out being revered.
Hmm.
If they came from a traumatic background where they were disregarded, abused, um, anything of that nature that squashed them down as little people trying to grow up, what's your best defense?
Overcome it
Overcome it. Be
and
the
take
big kid in the
charge.
room. Take charge, right?
Take control. Yeah,
Take
take
charge.
control.
So it's not just I'm going to be a manager at a supermarket. It's like I'm going to own all the supermarkets, and then I am going anybody that I perceive that is in my way or interfering with my journey. Now I do have these toxic traits that I carry with that I'm acting out on, right?
It gives them drive
Gives them drive.
almost.
And it see the it, what are you going to be? You're going to be an abuser, or are you going to be an advocate, or are you going to be a victim? What is it? It played a role in your life. So how is that going to affect you?
Hmm.
Where the victim, let's say again with traumatic background, you ever seen those how like when puppies are abandoned by
Well,
animals are abandoned by their mothers, what's one of the first things that rehab people do? They put a little stuffed animal in there or something,
right.
right? To
Mhm.
comfort them. Why?
I don't know.
Because it's familiar.
You're the therapist.
Because it's familiar,
You're
right?
the mental health counselor
So they
professional.
they immediately instinctually give them a little stuffed animal or something like that because it's familiar. It's
Okay.
familiar. Okay. So take the concept of something being familiar, take the sting out of it with no judgment, whether familiar is 3 meals a day sitting at a table and talking with your family, or familiar is sitting under your table eating scraps off the floor because nobody's fed you and you're just trying to be fed. Either
Right.
way, good or bad, it's
It's
familiar,
familiar.
right? And as you're
Okay.
growing up and your brain is developing, you latch onto the things that are familiar, right?
Okay. Okay.
Um, so for a victim to return back and forth into those dynamics, and this is one aspect of it, it's because that's what they know. That's what they
Is
know.
it like the devil you know instead of the devil you don't?
Kinda, yeah. But that's another piece. That's when you're making a conscious choice of, I'm afraid of what I don't know. A lot
Right.
of people, they don't even know they're going back. I see it all the time. It's just this loop. And I can tell when they're not going to do it. I can tell. But when I'm working with them, I don't say, don't do it. Don't go back. I don't do any of that.
You have to let them cycle through.
You got
I
to let
always
them
say
do it.
that. You do. You have to, and sometimes people go back multiple times
Most often
before.
it does. Yeah.
Right. And then they realize when they go back that it's the same.
Mm-hmm. Or then
And
they manifest something healthy, right? They
mhm,
manifest a healthy relationship, and because it's so unfamiliar, they they do damage to it because it
right.
doesn't feel safe. So they need to create it into something yucky so it feels familiar. And sometimes it's not even done intentionally. That's one of the jobs that I do, is point out, hey, maybe we should look at this. You're kind of the common
Subconscious.
denominator here. Let's put it
Right.
up into the forefront and see, instead of being like, all my relationships turn to crap. Well, you know, this guy was really good. So let's talk about
What
why
you
this
did you
changed.
did you self-sabotage,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Like because I made a comment once to a friend of mine, like when I was going through, my divorce and everything, and when it was over
Hmm.
and everything was over and it was finalized and he had taken all of his stuff out of the house and was really gone. And that's when I kind of like broke a little bit.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I didn't want him gone. That wasn't it. Like that's when I kind of like was a little bit like, ugh, and she goes, what is up with you? She's like, that whole thing was going on and all the police stuff and court stuff and all this stuff. And she was totally fine. She's like, now you're falling apart. And I said, I work better in chaos than calm.
Most people do, because let me tell you about that. That chaos is, how this, everybody's like, oh, go do some mindfulness classes, get yourself present, right? Go in there. Now, some of it's really good stuff.
Is that how they talk when they're
No,
telling you
they're just like, here, dude, go get some
get yourself
mindfulness.
some mindfulness. Hit up on that.
The reason we thrive in chaos is because it forces you to be present. You have to be.
It's action.
when
It's
somebody,
action.
yeah, you have to be present, you have to be aware. It's just
Hmm.
enough hypervigilance to keep you focused.
Right?
Especially if you got a little ADHD, man, nothing like a crisis to keep you keep you on
Woo!
the road, you know?
Keep you in it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also the I had to explain this to a client once. Um, if you're in the presence of someone, or you're with a family, your family, and someone is passing away and they're in the active process of dying, right?
Got
It's
it. Right.
incredibly intense. It's a
Hmm.
bond you share with everybody, and
It
it keeps
is.
you, man, you are present. You are
You
present.
are.
And there is nothing like that feeling with a group of people when you're all
True.
present together with one common goal. And there are certain things that happen in life that get us there. And I
Mm.
wish I could
Mm.
say the I think the most I think the closest thing that we have to a positive experience of that is birth. You know, you're
Right.
suddenly
Right.
present when you're giving birth, right?
Well, if you're not, then tell me how you figured that one out
Yeah.
because
But
how'd you do it?
yeah, but they're even like when you talk to people when they get married and stuff,
Hmm.
they half the time they don't even remember the wedding because they were so
Right.
caught up in what. But those things that make us present, we can sometimes be our best selves, whether that's in crisis and things like that. So that, just to bring it full circle, so that I had this client, they were actively participating in a family member dying. They'd never had this before. And afterwards, what happens? We all kind of go back to our normal lives, and it can be very, very lonely.
Because
And
life doesn't stop.
no, and that's why I'm always, when I'm doing grief and therapy stuff, I always tell people, reach out to them 2 weeks later.
Yeah,
Not right now. And she
it's true.
came, she was felt so guilty because, and she took her a while for her to say anything, but she finally said, I kind of almost wish someone would die again. I miss my family.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And so then we worked really hard on how to create connection without there having to be crisis, right? So that's why
Right.
people have a tendency to create crisis, because it forces them to be present, okay, which is what they need. Um, we all need that.
I
And
wonder if I do that. I wonder if I do that.
but I think as we get older too, Ellen, you're creating things in your life that keep you present. I mean, I have things in my life that keep me present. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be crisis, but but that's the beauty of wisdom as you get older, right? You start to develop things that are healthier, that meet your needs.
Well, I do know that. I mean, okay, I don't mean like I create crisis. I mean, because I don't want I don't want crisis in my life
Sure.
that, I've had plenty. I would never look for a crisis. You know what though? I have to say, and sometimes when you go, okay, so this goes back to like the people going back, right? Like sometimes when you get to a really calm and peaceful place, some people don't sit there very well.
Well,
Do you
let's
know what
look
I
at that.
mean?
Most people don't. So the analogy I use often when people are trying to relearn how to live
Mhm,
is, I'll
mhm.
say, you have been living at volume 11 and I'm asking
Mm.
you to live at 6. And you can't hear anything, you can't feel anything, nothing's big enough to really draw you in.
Right?
So let's find the calm in 6 instead of jacking it up to 11 all the time. But I don't understand. I can't hear anything. I can't feel anything. Okay, so let's just
Just
slow
sit with it.
everything down. Let's sit with it.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why people create crisis. Number one, because they have been in crisis. That's the only way they know how to live familiar again,
Right.
right? And it's
Right.
also the things that brought their loved ones together. So why wouldn't you want that, right?
It's so interesting. So okay, so when we talk about people returning to abusive situations
Mm-hmm.
and, people who haven't been in them can't understand why people would do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say, I will be 100% completely honest that I did return
Mm-hmm.
briefly.
Mm-hmm.
I did return briefly, and there were a couple of different reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I did it to myself. It wasn't anybody doing it to me. If anything, nobody wanted me to even consider being back with my ex-husband.
Sure.
it wasn't anybody pushing me to do it. What it was I felt like kind of the weight of societal construct. I
Okay.
felt the weight of my kids having divorced parents. I felt
Um,
the weight of two houses. Oh, when you graduate, your parents are going to be sitting separate. Oh, like, and I felt the weight of that. And I did.
that's
It was
real.
a
Yeah.
moment. It's one I look back on. Didn't last very long, I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
that much.
Mm-hmm.
Definite, like momentary
Yeah.
lapse of judgment, reason, sanity. Um, because when I did, because I didn't go all the way in. Okay, I didn't go all the way in. We weren't living together again or anything like that. Like kids didn't even know like about it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll tell you this. There's like a 1 hour honeymoon period before all the behavior starts again. Because if you do go back, that's a bit of a victory for them.
Oh, sure.
And because they feel that power again and that control
Absolutely.
again, they say to themselves, at least I think they say to themselves, if they're whatever, um, well, apparently my behavior before was just fine because here she is.
Oh, sure. It validates even, I mean, even if you
I'm
think,
not proud of it. I want to say that right now. I'm not proud of it. It's one of my biggest regrets. Like I said, it didn't last very long. I look back at that
but,
brief
but
period, which was
Helen,
years ago,
I
and
don't
I
think,
say to myself, what the fuck was I thinking?
yeah, but why
What
can't you
was I
have a
thinking?
little, why? I don't know why you have to be so difficult, mean to yourself about it. I mean, that people need to,
Because I'm a mean person, Katie. All right. Deep down, I'm just
you're just
horrible and
mean.
rotten inside.
Um, most people do, it's at all different levels.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just, sometimes you physically go back for a hot minute. Sometimes you just, stalk them on the internet for a little bit. It's sometimes I mean, but there's lots of different ways that people need to poke at that bear a little bit to go, was I ever, I mean, was, maybe it's not that bad. And then it can be very, very hard, which I give you a lot of credit for talking about it, because then, you fear the judgment of all the people that supported you to leave.
Well, I don't want to be a fraud, right? Like I don't want to sit up here and say, like I've made the statement when I make a decision, I make a decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I left originally. But I'm not gonna sit up here and say to people like, "Ooh, I'm like the fucking strongest person in the world because I left and never looked back and blah blah blah." No, I've got 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's their dad,
Yep.
right? We had a life, we had family, we had activity, we had a unit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was just the fact that our personal relationship sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But my kids had all of this other stuff,
Yeah.
family, whatever, because we were together.
Yep.
But so I'm not going to sit up here and act like I'm perfect. I'm close. I'm close to perfect.
Well, what happens too
Say
is
it
that
all the time.
you say,
But
and
I'm
then,
not going to lie. I
but
mean, like,
here's
I'm not going to
but
lie.
here's the lie we tell ourselves. So we can get into this, because remember, your mind isn't healed yet, right? I mean, you're still, you
Oh,
still,
no.
yeah, you're
No, it's
still
not.
compromised in your thinking. And so when you're saying to yourself, oh, I'm just being selfish by leaving, this is the boys, this is their father, da, 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 you're not, because the reality is you would not be the woman they needed you to be if you had stayed. That would have been easier.
It would have been easier in so many different ways, but in so many other different ways,
Yeah. But
it
I
would
mean,
have
the
been so
point is,
much worse for
it's
everybody involved,
exactly, that's why,
including them.
yes, exactly. That's my point. So even though you had all of this guilt about the boys and stuff, ultimately inside you knew what the right thing was to do, even though you were grappling with the fact you might have thought it was selfish, or um, we need to know that if we boy, I say this all the time. If we aren't taking care of ourselves and being the whole people we need to be, we are doing our children a huge
Total
disservice.
disservice.
Yeah, you
We
know.
are. So, returning, and we understand, like, talking about people returning. Okay. Like, I knew it myself. If I go back, I know exactly how it'll be. I know exactly how it'll be. Right. Like,
Mhm.
and how it will be in a bad way. Right.
Yep.
But also too, when you know what to expect, you
Yeah.
know how to handle it.
Well,
So
you gotta,
that's why
yeah,
some
there's a part
people
of me
go
that's,
back.
yeah, there's a part of people who I've got this happening with a client right now. He's going back a little bit and he's like handling it totally differently. And she doesn't like it because
I
he's
hope it's not Melon Guy.
no, it's not Melon.
Because I'm really pulling for Melon Guy. Melon
Melon
Guy, I'm
Guy's
pulling
doing
for
really
it.
good. In fact, you know what Melon Guy's assignment was this week?
What is he smelling this week?
He, well, he's got all these new skills and he feels like he can
Yeah.
be very helpful and he's feeling like he wants to go and so when people have grown and changed and they're at that place where they can feel a little antsy, like they want the world to know all this great information,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What I like for people to do is to take themselves out of their environment, go to some place they've never been before. I often say
Right.
go to Niagara on the Lake because it feels like I love it there, but it also feels like you're like in Europe or something. So, you know,
Great outlet mall, too. Great outlet
yeah,
mall.
it's true. Go someplace you've never been before
Mhm.
and see who you are
In that environment.
in a brand new environment. Do you talk to people more now? Do you talk to people less? Do you walk differently? Do you feel differently when you're looking in windows at shops and stuff? Get to know who you are now. Take yourself out.
I like that.
And so that was his assignment. That was his assignment. He wasn't quite ready. He's like, all right, what if I came back with like some things I'm gonna try? I'm like, that's fine. But I want us, this antsiness is because you need to spread your wings a little bit.
Yeah. He's rapping on the door. He
He
wants
smelled
out.
all the melons,
He
you
smells.
know,
There's only so many melons.
and I mean,
He
he's way
smell.
beyond the grocery store, so to speak. He is ready, to go out there and see what he looks like now when he walks into the world. And
Love
that's a
that.
really amazing thing to
I
witness.
love that.
Hmm.
And I think that's important. And so when you get caught in this cycle of returning, like we said, some people return multiple times. And there's almost like this little hope, like it'll be different this time, it'll be different this time, it'll be better this time, it'll be better this time.
Sure.
Like people with these traits, these abusive personalities or disorders, what
Uh-huh.
personality disorders, um, these people aren't going to magically change um
No.
unless
They
they
have
do the
to they have to
work.
go through the same process as
Right.
remember, we're
Got to
walking
do the
a
work.
parallel line here. We're walking a parallel line. You're going to be one or you're going to be the other. And
Right.
then you have to find and heal and get in the middle. You're polar opposites, but of the same dynamic. Both are looking for safety. One is fight, one is flight, right? I mean, so fear is going to manifest in really not that many different ways.
Right.
And I know I've used this analogy before, but it's one of my favorites. If you're a dog cornered and someone's coming at you, you're either going to bite them or you're going to pee.
I am the type of dog that would bite him.
Yeah. Well, see, that's why there was such, he could not beat you down to pee.
He could not make me pee.
Yeah.
Wasn't happening.
Well, well, you need to make pee-pees, Ellen, now. Yeah. On that note,
Oh shit. Oh God. Anyway,
um,
on that note,
on
Katie,
that
what are
note,
your final thoughts
you
in
know what?
regards to
I want
people
to touch,
returning?
yeah, people
Yes.
returning. Do not be ashamed of the returning. There's a
Yes.
process called, the decision wheel, kind of like the power and control wheel.
Oh, okay.
Part of, and like it's used a lot in addiction and stuff, part of the healing is the relapse. You have to
Oh,
go and tap your new skill and be like, wait a second, this is what it is. Some people need to do that more often than not. But the most important thing is that you remember why you're there. You're there to try it out with your new lenses. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Relapse is part of
it
recovery,
is part
right?
of
Isn't that the
recovery.
phrase? Yeah.
Absolutely, it is. Because you need to feel who you are now in that same position to really validate the changes and the growth that you've made.
I think that's a great way to put it because what did I say to somebody? I can't remember who I was talking to. And they said, is this podcast triggering for you at all?
Hmm,
And I was like, well, sometimes it is, but that's only because I'm learning how to, in a new way to deal with my triggers.
different. Yeah.
They're
I,
still there. It's just,
mhm,
do I let it trigger
mhm.
me?
And I think,
Um,
the process of disentangling the triggers that were built inside of you, I like to think of them still, even when you dismantle them, you kind of have phantom triggers, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah, that are still there and catch you off guard. And but there's a reason. You're absolutely right. If you have a sliver in your finger, what do we do? To know if it's gone or not, we keep rubbing it. Does that still hurt? Does that still hurt? It's probably still in there. That kind
Still
of thing.
there, still
Yeah,
there, still there.
yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And so you do, it's almost like checking in with your triggers.
Oh, it's
You know,
important. It's very important.
what you gonna do to me today? Are you gonna do
And
anything?
and some of
Okay,
them might ever never go away, but they might get to a point where they're so faint, it's just a reminder. Especially with, strong PTSD. When I'm working with the guys, I always tell them, you're never going to ever want to hear another firework. It's gone. I think, it's done. So let that one just, it's never coming back. Let me tell you, but
yeah,
the nightmares and the night terrors, those will start to diminish, but there's some triggers that just kind of wormed their way into your psyche. And
yeah,
it's how it changed you, you know?
yeah. They do. They do change you. And then that's why I think it's so important to do the work. Like when I speak with my therapist, I ask her very honest questions. Like,
Mhm.
shockingly, Rachel says to me every week, Ellen, you never disappoint. And like, I'm gonna take that as a compliment.
Yeah,
But like, like when I said to her, I'm like, is everybody in the world losing their fucking minds? And she's like, yes. I'm
pretty
like,
much.
oh, so I was observant. I
Yeah.
noticed something.
Well,
But
we are surrounded by so many things we can't control that we need to project blame somewhere.
mm,
And our whole
shooting all over the place these
yeah, and
days.
so that's why we're attacking each other. That's why we're split politically. That's why but that's a whole other thing.
There's
But
a
yeah,
lot going on. Yeah, that's a whole other, yeah.
but the
I'm not,
concept when somebody, when something bad happens, we always are trying to find a place to blame because we need to put that somewhere, right?
we
And we
do.
have such a cumulative in the last 5 years, the things that we had no place to blame, just
Yeah.
the nonsense that's going on, and there's no boy, do we want to place blame though? We want it to be black and white because then that makes sense. But
Well,
we
that,
can't.
yeah. No,
Sometimes
that's not how the
it's
world
just all
is. And
bad. It's just real bad.
if anything, every day it's getting more complicated. So you just gotta work on figuring it out. So
Right.
okay, so your very final thought.
Well, my final
Okay,
thought is relapse
yes.
is a part of recovery. Okay. But I
And
think
don't give yourself some grace.
oh, please, yeah. And the other thing is, I think this also kind of just sums up what we were talking about toxic masculinity, just taking the gender out of it at all. Be good people. Just be
If
good people.
yeah, I mean it's so simple, but so
I mean, that's
not
what it's coming down to, though,
simple.
right? I mean, the universe is putting us back into just be a good person. I can't tell you how many times when my kids go out the door, be a good person.
Are you kidding me? On my door, my side door, have you ever, oh crap, I'm not going to remember the name of it.
What?
There's this website that has all these really cool stickers.
Okay.
And I have like 5 stickers on the inside of my door. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, work hard, be kind. Don't forget how incredibly capable you are. Like, blah, 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 like just drilling
It's
positivity.
all over. It's just drooping and it's, yeah. Yeah.
But
And
I love
celebrate.
them.
Yeah. And
I
celebrate
love
when
them.
people you love, um, and the people you're raising Celebrate
Yeah.
when they make, my favorite quote, I'm probably repeating myself, but integrity is
Oh,
what you do
God.
when no one's watching.
No one's watching.
Be a good person, and then everything else just falls into place. Really
It's
does.
like,
Yeah.
well, isn't it, who said it? I don't know if it was Lucille Ball. Love yourself and everything else works out.
Yeah, it's true. And
Everything falls into place. Lucille Ball? I don't know. She seems too funny to be
I
saying
uh
something
I,
like
I
that.
think you're very wrong. I don't know why you said that. I think this is
The
that
1% of
time
the time that I'm
when
wrong.
you're wrong. I think you've been wrong, I think twice tonight. I think there might have been two times.
I'm
That's
growing. Do you see my growth?
that's why I'm no fun. Even in my household, I got a household of folks who like to be right. I'm like, okay.
I don't give a shit.
They're like, that's not fun. I'm like, okay.
I'm letting go of it. I
Mhm.
am.
All
Because
right.
what the hell does it matter? All right, we're done.
I
That
have,
was the final thought.
yep.
Also, again, you matter. Don't beat yourself up if you return to
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah,
Um, every day is a possibility to change it.
absolutely. Have a
Every day
great
is a new
week.
day. You too.
I'm gonna say Ellen Bellin, Bo Bellin, Banana Nana, Bo Bellin, me, my, Mo Melon. You heard what?
You're not gonna end with smelling like
No,
that
but
kid
I
said.
I did just you see that there was a melon in there. Okay, go make pee pee, Ellen. Bye bye.
See, see you next week.
Bye.